Happy Sabbath, everyone. Just takes 30 seconds to calm down. Last night here at Oakwood, we concluded 10 days of prayer. Every night for the last 10 days, a lot of you joined over the call. And last night also, so many of you showed up. Personally, I was really blessed by all these, this dedicated time where we all got together and prayed for many prayer requests. And I want to thank Linda Keaton here and then Frank Payne, wherever he is, from the prayer ministry for doing so much hard work so that we can enjoy that dedicated time. And also all the speakers and the prayer warriors for all the 10 days that really blessed our hearts. So the title of my sermon today is Let God Put a Dream in Your Heart. Now, we're still in January, so I thought it would be okay to talk about resolutions. Yeah. Usually every year I would have one resolution towards the end of the year. I would retrospect and thank God for all He had done. And, think of some area in my life where I should improve and then come up with a small resolution that I could stick to it. This year I wasn't having it. I was in a really kind of weird mood, and I thought to myself, this is just nonsense. This is just like any other day. It's a big deal and overrated. That's exactly my attitude. I would have continued my attitude would have been like that for a long time if not for Jason Hamstra, Elder Jason Hamstra. I was here sitting over there with Roger and Laura, and he was talking about resolutions. And I was listening to him and all that stuff, and this is exactly my mood. New year, new me. I wasn't having it at all. And he made everyone take out their phone and then type a resolution. I was like, I don't want to do it, but because Roger and Laura pulled out their phones, and I was just fake typing it. He went beyond. He said, just send this resolution to somebody else. Even before he finished, I got a text. Someone was asking me to be their accountability partner. I felt really ridiculed because, here I am having this attitude, and then someone thought I would be a good person to be accountable, to keep them accountable. I felt like a hypocrite. So I went back, during that week, I kept thinking about it. Why was I so indifferent, right? What is it that is making me frustrated or indifferent to these things? I kind of did a light soul searching, not a lot, just a little bit. And as I was contemplating on it, I thought, how would people in the Bible, when they go through disappointments or frustrations or kind of these kind of feelings, how would they somehow continue to be faithful and hopeful? As I was thinking, Joseph stood up. The story of Joseph you can find from chapters 37 to 47 in Genesis. I studied the story of Joseph with this question in mind, what made him go on for those many years without losing his hope? And I'm not going to go into details for the sake of the sermon. I encourage you to go home sometime whenever you have time, read through these 10 chapters. It's a quick read, really interesting. For the sake of this sermon today, I divided the whole life of Joseph into 4 different parts, and for each part I have one question that I asked. I could have gone with many different questions, but I want to finish my sermon within 15 minutes. The first part is the dreams of Joseph. When Joseph was around 17 years old, God gave him 2 dreams. The first one, you can see them in the picture here. The first one informed him that he's going to be greater than his brothers. And the second one was informed him that he's not only going to be greater than his brothers, but he's going to be greater than his parents, his father Jacob. Now, Joseph didn't understand all the details at the time and how this is going to play out. But he realized through these dreams that his life has a purpose now, and he is dedicated by God to do certain things. Okay? Now, the question I want to ask is, why did God give Joseph dreams? There are 11 other brothers. Why didn't he give them? I can't really answer this question, so I thought, what if God didn't give Joseph dreams, right? What would have happened? Now, Joseph, according to Wikipedia, lived around 3,800 years ago. The fact that we're still talking about him today is because of these dreams that God had given him, right? Now, these dreams are not just dreams that we all ordinarily dream, but these dreams are specifically informing Joseph that this is what the purpose of your life that I set for you. Now, when you look at John 15:16, Jesus was talking to his disciples. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give it to you. You know, Jesus chose all of us, and he gave us a specific purpose. Sometimes we realize those purposes, sometimes we don't. But the fact that he gave a purpose is because he wants us to be fruitful. He wants us to bear a fruit, and this fruit, it specifically says that it should abide. That means this fruit doesn't rot. It remains like that forever. So that's his goal for our lives. Now, some of us actually forget these dreams. We cruise through year after year. Sometimes we barely survive, and we do minimum required by us to pass through the day. But the story of Joseph is informing us that in order for us to bear a fruit, in order for us to have a meaning for this life and this existence, we must have a dream. Now, some of us had dreams, right? And then, but the cares of this world and different things would prevent us from accomplishing those dreams. And some of us are indifferent to them, and it's like, this is not relevant anymore. And some of us, think that we got a dream, but I don't know what that is about. We don't even comprehend what that is for. But I pray that, I think personally I felt that I should pray again so that God reveals his dream and renews that commitment in my heart so that I have that purpose in my life. In some of our lives, some of these dreams came true, right? And we had a dream that God gave us, and it was fulfilled. That doesn't mean it's the end of the life. Joseph had 2 dreams. The second dream is bigger than the first one. So what the story of Joseph is telling us is like, we should ask for another dream if the dream is fulfilled. Now, I want to be very cautious here. One thing I would like to stress here is that Joseph didn't come up with these dreams. These dreams were given to him by God. We must be very careful about the origin of our dream. If not, even with the good intentions, we could harm God's very own people. If you think about Paul, who was, as a Saul of Tarsus, wanted to be faithful to God, and that was his dream, and he went around killing Christians. Now, Proverbs 16:9 says, the heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes its steps. So we want God to establish our steps. So we need to pray for God to reveal the dream in our hearts. Now, the second part of Joseph's life is, Joseph told his dreams to his brothers and father. Brothers hated him for that, and the father, Jacob, who loved him so much, admonished him. Now, we understand that the brothers don't like Joseph, but why did Jacob dislike Joseph's dreams? Right? Joseph had dreams in his life. He knows how God talks to, his own people. Why did he dislike? Why did he admonish Joseph? Now, the story of Joseph teaches us that not everyone will celebrate your success, including those that love you the most. Actually, that's the loneliest place to be. You have this dream that's burning your heart, and the closest people that love you don't understand you. That's a very difficult place to be. When we wish for a dream, we must also pray for courage to be disliked and love so that we can love those who mistreat us. What would have happened if the brothers of Joseph and Jacob and his wife celebrated the dream of Joseph, right? Instead of being jealous and angry with him, had they celebrated this dream with him? No one at the time, including Joseph, knew what was the purpose of this dream. But had they celebrated this dream with him, it would have been so much easier and nicer when they went to Egypt to buy grain, right? Now, the question is, I'm asking here, what should I do if I'm in the place of Joseph's brothers, right? Now, Philippians 2:3 says, do nothing from rivalry or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. We could be in a situation either at work, in the school, by the neighbors, or within the family, our siblings. One of them would have a bigger dream than ours. And I want to admit, it creates jealousy in our hearts. Sometimes we want to ridicule them. Look at your dream. But the story of Joseph is telling us that when you celebrate in that person's dream, the accomplishment of that dream eventually will benefit you. God gives these dreams to other people so that in the end, you get benefited by it. So I am praying that when I see someone else having a bigger dream than mine, I want to celebrate with them and be happy for their success. Now the next event, so Joseph was, betrayed by his brothers. He was beaten down, and they threw him into the pit. Next morning, they sold him like an animal to these, the people that are going to Egypt. And then he was enslaved in Egypt for 11 years. And he was faithful for 11 years, and at the end of the 11 years, a wrongful accusation causes him to be imprisoned. Now, the question I want to ask is, why did God didn't make it easy for him, right? Why did Joseph have to go through all these difficulties? It was God's dream, right? He is the one who put the dream in his heart. Now, we have some Bible verses in the Bible that say, when God is for you, who is against you? Right? That means when God is with you, you shouldn't have any difficulties. But why did this person go through such hardships for 13 years? No one should go through these difficulties, especially when you have a dream given to you by God. Now, Psalm 100, because God gave you a dream doesn't mean it's going to be easy. We know this from Psalms 105:19. It says, until the time came to fulfill his dreams, the Lord tested Joseph's character. I have a problem with how we interpret this Bible verse. I might be I want to be careful what I say. Now, Bible says that even before I was formed in my mother's womb, God knew me, right? He knows the number of days I'm going to live. He knows all the hairs in my body, like in my hair and head and all that. He knows my thoughts, inmost thoughts. Even before I speak, he knows what to bless me with. Don't you think God knows who I am? Don't you think God knows if Joseph is going to be faithful or not? Then why does he have to test him again? If you use that logic, that means this testing is not for God. It's for Joseph himself, right? God knew everything about Joseph, but he put him through these circumstances for a reason. Now, follow me here, right? I'm going to explain. This is complicated. So when life is good, we have all the blessings in life. It is very easy to be a good man and good woman, right? But when trials and temptations come, when we are stretched in every direction, that's when our character is revealed. And we all know we're not perfect. None of us is perfect. And when we see these flaws of us, we get this opportunity to go back to God and say, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I'm this awful. You got to fix me. That's when, with his grace, he covers us and he fixes us. He does this again and again and again till we become that person, that man and a woman, the child and the older person, young person, anybody who it is, till we become that person who can properly, appropriately steward this dream of God. It is for me so that I don't squander this dream. So when difficulties come in our life, when we want to just throw the towel and then walk away, we have to remember that God is doing this so that I learn something about myself. Sometimes I hit the wall again and again and again, and I got to stop and say, okay, what do you want me to learn here? There is something in me that I'm not seeing. You got to make it easy for me. And when difficulties hit us hard, that means we're not listening to the usual methods God is using. So if you are in this state, right, if you're in this point where everything is pulling you every side and you're struggling, I want you to be strong, because even though it was so awful for Joseph, when Joseph was in the pit, God was with him. When Joseph was in the slavery, he was with him. He was the most faithful guy, and he was overseer of everything in their home. When he was put in the prison, actually for the charge of rape, the death is the punishment. He wasn't killed because the Potiphar knew that he didn't do that. So they put him in jail. Even in the jail, God was with him. You see, no matter where you are, how difficult the life is, God is with you. And he will make sure to walk you out of that. Now, I want to go so I want to go to the next and final event. Now, Joseph was elevated, right? He was to the point of number 2 in the kingdom. He was given charge of all the grain and how to gather them, how to sell them. And then he saw his brothers come, he confronted them, they repented, and then eventually he was reunited with his father and the rest of the family. Now, the question I wanted to ask here is, Joseph went through awful stuff, right? His own brothers, it's not even foreign people or someone else that didn't know him. His own people that he lived with for 17 years beat him and sold him like an animal. Why does he want to be generous to his brothers? Why was Joseph generous to his brothers? He could have just be generous to his father, but not for the rest of them. Why was he way beyond generous than required? When I thought about this question, I felt this was very difficult for me to understand. Why was he generous? Joseph would have understood through the trials and tribulations that the dream of his, like the dream that God put in his heart, is not for himself, it's for others. If you look Romans 8:28, it says, "And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good for those who are called according to his purpose." We have to realize no purpose of God or no dream of God is for selfish reasons. Every blessing is given so that we bless others. Now, you might not believe me. Look, Luke 6:38. "Give, and it will be given to you." This is Jesus who is saying, "Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you." And look at Proverbs 11:24 and 25. "One gives freely, yet grows all richer. Another withholds what he should give and only suffers want. Whosoever brings blessing will be enriched, and whosoever waters will be himself watered." This is how God's kingdom works. Every blessing that we have is not for ourselves alone. It is for others too. We must continually bless others so that we continually get blessed. This is how God's kingdom operates. In the end, I want to close with this promise. I was surprised when Elder Joe Skrabowski read this verse, and it's so fitting. In Jeremiah 29:11, God said, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for calamity, to give you a future and a hope." He wants us to be purpose-driven people. He wants us to have a hope in our hearts. He wants us to have a meaning for our existence. He doesn't want us to just wander around year after year. That's what I realized. It is so easy for us to forget that and think, what's the point of my life? Throughout the 10 days of prayer, when we were taking prayer requests, a lot of them, young people, went through suicidal thoughts. Some of them went through depression. I don't know all the reasons for depression, but lack of hope is a big thing. Here we are Christians. Within our church also, a lot of people feel lack of hope because we don't realize the dream of God. That is not the intention of God, that we feel depressed and suicidal and then not have a meaning for our life. He wants us to have meaning for our existence. He wants us to be hopeful. Even our bodies frail, He still wants us to live with that hope. So as we end this service today with the song, We Have This Hope, and I pray that we all realize this dream of God and then live this life with a purpose and, see Jesus and then have all explained to us why we had to go through all these things. So, thank you, everyone.